It's Grace Redman, and thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Real Talk, where I get to have real life, raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and communities who have overcome challenges and created amazing. I have a very special guest for you today. She's a freaking rock star. Juliana Salfiti is a force to be reckoned with, both in the courtroom and in life. A seasoned civil litigator and partner at her firm, she specializes in high stakes litigation while also shaping future lawyers as a professor of pre-trial litigation at UCSF Hastings. She's also a fierce advocate for women in law, serving as the San Francisco regional representative for WAVE, a program dedicated to advancing and empowering women in the legal profession. As a single mother, Juliana knows the meaning of resilience. She's built an incredible career while also breaking barriers outside the legal world, embracing fitness and weightlifting, and even launching a successful modeling career in her 40s. Beyond her professional achievements, Juliana is deeply committed to giving back. She volunteers her time with nonprofit organizations, using her expertise and passion to support those in need. When she's not in the courtroom, classroom, or gym, you'll find her tackling local hiking trails, proving that limits are meant to be pushed. Juliana is living proof that success has no age limit, no boundaries, just the will to go after what you want. I love her. Help me welcome Juliana Solfiti today.
Hello. Thank
Hi,
you.
Juliana.
Thank you for that very warm welcome.
You're welcome. I mean, that's you, sister. That is you.
Yeah, that's me. It's hard to hear sometimes.
I get it. I get it. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're super busy, so I appreciate your time, and I'm looking
Of
forward to,
course. Pleasure.
diving in. How have you been?
Good. It's been really busy actually lately. I have quite a few trials coming, so work has been keeping me very busy at the moment, but wouldn't have it any other way. So
I get it. I get it. I think we're very similar like that. And I know I've shared with you, it's like I go, go, go. And I'm like, whoa, I gotta push back. So that's been, one of my patterns. And so how do you stay, grounded when things get so busy and you're a mom and you have so many other things going on. How do you stay grounded?
I think what's really important for me is just trying to always find balance in life, irrespective of whatever it is that may be keeping you busy. Ultimately, as a mom and a working professional, your days are always going to be busy and there's always going to be stress in your life. So you have to find ways to balance that. And for me, that's, a function of being super organized with my time and my schedule and sticking to that and not really, letting people kind of jump in last minute on certain things because I have to carve out time for myself. But it's also just, finding things that you're passionate about in life that you can spend your time doing. And for me, that has a lot to do with hiking a lot of trails out here, weightlifting, trying to stay fit, finding other, things to be passionate about in the arts, which I really love. So, those are all the things that really keep me grounded, is just primarily trying to focus on having a solid work-life balance, which can be very challenging,
Get it.
but so important. So
I get it. It is so important. And one thing that I love, you talked about the weightlifting and the fitness, which I'm right there with you. How important do you believe that the fitness and the weightlifting and the moving our body is to our mindset and our success in our careers?
I think it's really important for everybody to have some kind of outlet, regardless of what that is. For me, exercise has become a huge part of that for my life and for my ability to de-stress and decompress, because I have a very difficult and challenging profession that I work in every day, and not just in terms of stress management. It's also so important as women, as someone who's 50 years old and aging, to make sure that I'm taking very good care of myself and being healthy and weightlifting, because as we age we lose a lot of bone density and muscle mass and everything else. And I want to be around for the long haul. I want to be able to play with my future grandkids and be the cool grandma and be fit and healthy enough to do that. So to me, it's more than just stress management. It's about longevity and
Yes.
feeling good, you know?
Yes. I'm totally with you on that. And, also being in my 50s, in the past, it was all about, the cardio, and I know now as we're aging and we're thinking about longevity, it's the weightlifting and the, resistance training that's so important to keep us healthy and fit. So it's not just one thing. It's not just about, looking good and feeling good. It's about being able to stay healthy as we age.
Right. And strength training for women, I think, is critical for that. I think sometimes as women we get very hung up with the number on the scale. So a lot of women like focus on cardio and don't pay much mind to strength training. And I think what a lot of people would realize if they actually, try to do these things is that the stronger you get, the better you feel. And, that has nothing to do with, any number on the scale, which obviously doesn't define you as a person or anything like that. But for overall health purposes, like it's really important for everybody to have some sort of strength training program incorporated into their daily routine for sure.
Yes, and protein. We need to eat. So it's
Yeah.
so crazy how it's changed from when, we were younger to now. It's just been like a total 180 when it comes to, fitness and health and nutrition. I wanna eat, I wanna take care of my body to stay healthy, and it's not about the number on the scale. One thing, you made partner and you're, teaching at UCSF, and you had the incredible modeling career. You're doing and you're a mother. You're doing so many incredible things. You're a badass. And when we spoke, you mentioned, imposter syndrome comes up, which I could relate. So, can you go take us back to a moment where that syndrome kind of sprung up, and how do you navigate it?
Sure. Um, so, ultimately, in this career, in my profession, I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot, which some people would probably not believe if I actually express that to them because I try very hard to portray myself at all times, at least professionally,
Good.
as somebody who is confident and experienced and capable. But there's always those moments in the back of your mind where there's a glimmer of self-doubt. And I think one of the, I guess, key things that jumps out at me when you're asking about one particular experience would probably be when I was approached to become partner. I thought to myself, what? Like, I don't deserve that. This is not something that I can do. And then I had to check myself and remind myself that it's not about whether it is something you can do. It is something that I've earned, and I've spent the last, couple decades of my life working very hard to be the best that I can be in the profession that I am and the specialties that I'm in, and understanding that it's okay to accept the fact that other people see you in a position of power, of leadership, of success. Um, and it's okay to be confident enough in yourself to believe the things that people tell you. Interestingly enough, we had a holiday party a few months ago for the firm, and there were a couple of younger attorneys that approached me, and some of them that are actually working for the firm and intend to go to law school someday, and said some really wonderful complimentary things to me, things that I had not even really recognized that I was doing, but made them feel self assured in their track. And, the mentoring that I've been providing them by just being myself and just being who I am without actually, trying to be in that role for them. And it just really, reminded me that, all of the things that are coming into place and falling in line for me from a career perspective are really the result of the passion that I put into it, the hard work that I put into it, and the experience that I've accumulated over the years. And even though you can have those moments where you think to yourself, not me, I don't deserve this, or I'm not good enough to be doing this, you just got to check yourself. I think that's a very human function, irrespective of what you do for a living or who you are as a person, to have those moments of self doubt. But,
I agree.
self reflection is also really important to staying humble too. And I think that it's not the worst thing to have those moments of imposter syndrome, but just, remembering who you are and believing in the positive things that people see in you really will help you go much further. So,
Mm, I love that. I love that because you're saying, like, it's okay if they see the power within me.
right.
It's
And
okay
it's okay.
things or they know that's their perspective of you.
Right. It is their perspective of me. And it's funny because I think sometimes the perspective that people have of me as a professional, you don't necessarily recognize those things in yourself, because in the back of my mind, I'm just some kid that grew up in the Sunset District that's still like, 15 years old at heart,
I I get it.
so it's interesting to see that dynamic. But one of the things that you really just have to appreciate, I think, in life is that you're always one decision away from a
Mm,
better life, right?
amen.
And so whatever goal it is that you're headed toward, whatever your aims in life are, those are going to come with risk. But in order to actually get there, you have to make the decision and the choice to take that first step. And so it's really just your mindset and your ability to allow yourself to be afraid and to do
Mm,
it anyway.
yes. Well, would you say that's courage, like, being afraid and doing it anyway?
Of course, I think it takes a lot of courage to make difficult decisions. It was not my intention to become a lawyer when I was younger, but it is the path that I fell into. Um, and it has come with a lot of, tribulations, I guess, as I've sort of progressed in my career and as a working mom, and the levels of complexities that come with being a mother and a professional, especially in this career where it does require a lot of your time. It is not a 9 to 5 job. There are moments where you're in trial and you're not only having to like plan out your schedule and having to be away from home sometimes for days or weeks on end, but you have to have your entire, kids' lives planned out, and you need, a support system in place to be there to assist with that. So there's a lot of challenges that come with doing it, but you should never let that stop you. There's always a way.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. What one of the questions I was gonna ask you was, what was your motivation to become a lawyer? Is that something you had in mind from when you were young? However, you just said you fell into it. So can you
yeah.
share with us how that the story?
Sure. So I view myself as a very creative and artistic person, and my passions have always laid in the arts. And I always wanted to, like, move to New York and like audition for Broadway shows and all of that. And my parents, as immigrants to this country, were adamant that school was important and education was important. And one of the things my mom has always said to me is that no matter where you end up in life, the one thing that people cannot take away from you is your education. And so they asked me to finish school. And, law school just seemed like the next big step for me. And I was really reluctant to do it. But I did. And interestingly enough, it's, been one hell of a ride, and it's been a fantastic career for myself. And I'm good at it. So
You're
it's
great
all.
at it. You made partner and while raising a family as a single
Yes.
mother. And how did you get through those challenging moments? Was there ever a time that you felt like quitting?
Oh gosh. Candidly, yes. Probably every day.
I get
For a very, yeah, for a very long time. But I did make a decision very early on in my career that my kids were going to be my priority. So I was never really on the partner track when I was a younger lawyer. I wanted to be at their games, I wanted to be home to make dinner. I wanted to be around for all of their moments, their field trips, their shows at school and all of that. And so I made choices that aligned with being able to be present in their lives. But as they got older and needed less of my physical time, so to speak, I really started to put my own career goals um, at the forefront. And that's obviously worked out very well for me in light of what I've been able to achieve, I guess, and where I am now in my career. But there were moments all the time where, like, I would sit in the car sometimes, like, before heading home and having a bit of a breakdown and thinking to myself, like, how am I going to manage all this? And, for most women, their mind is chattering 24/7 with, like, the to-do list and, what's coming tomorrow and what needs to be done tonight and who do you need, to um talk to later this evening or whatever. There's just a million things that are constantly flowing through your head. Dinner, did I do laundry? Did I pick up, all of the things that go through our heads. And so, like, that can be incredibly overwhelming. And if I'm being fully honest, like, would cause a lot of anxiety for me sometimes. And what I would do is just kind of try to take a step back and just take a deep breath and just remind myself, like, it's all going to get done, it's going to be fine, we're going to put one foot in front of the other, we're going to get one thing done at a time, and make it work. And I think what works the best for me is just that I'm incredibly organized, or at least I think I am, with my scheduling and yeah, and my time. And so, kind of having everything mapped out and getting up early. I've always been kind of like somebody who gets up pretty early and goes to bed early because of it. But those hours in the morning where you're kind of doing whatever it needs to be accomplished while everybody else is still in bed asleep are, like, precious and golden. That's like the time to get everything done. So
They really are. I still get up early too. When you say early, what's early? Because I have some friends that get up at 4 a.m. That's a little early for me.
yeah, I used to do that, not so much anymore. I'm usually up between 5:30 and 6 on most days. So
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I love that very early morning time because you first of all have more creativity to get to certain things and the energy. And then it also gives me time to connect with, in meditation and in prayer, which, has helped me a lot as I've gone on my own journey. How important do you think that is? Like the connection to yourself and a higher power. How important has that been for you?
interestingly enough, I come from a family that's, pretty religious, but and I do feel like I'm a spiritual person and I do pray like every night, but I've never been like somebody who is um super religious, I guess I would say. I do feel like, there are moments in time where obviously, like, I have sort of looked, to the higher powers that be and asked for, like, guidance in my life. And interestingly enough, like, the universe always has a way of, like, giving you answers, right? When you need them. So,
Mhm.
in that way, I'm very spiritual, but I just try to keep both feet on the ground too at the same time, if that makes any sense.
For sure, and definitely, I'm very spiritual, not that it's against anyone who's religious, but for me, it's just spirituality for me just being connected to and staying present, finding peace, because things can get chaotic, and you could create your own storms without even realizing it, which
Right.
I've done, and I sometimes I still do when you talk about, as mothers having careers, like, you think about that list, and it's just ongoing, and like you said, just take a deep breath, step back, everything's going to get done, which, sometimes it is easier said than done. Do you block off time, like, just for yourself where you're like, "Okay, on the calendar, this day, this is for me. Nothing else is gonna interrupt me."
I try to, although I feel like sometimes when I do that, something always comes up that sort of disrupts that. I mean, it is important to make time for yourself and to do the things that allow you to feel better and move, I guess, with more. I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say, but basically, for me, ultimately, I do try to have those moments carved out for myself. Ultimately, that looks like for me is me going on a hike by myself and trying not to think about absolutely anything, just putting some good music on in my ears and going outside and breathing the fresh air and looking at the trees and really just trying to refocus and reset, although that can be challenging too sometimes because I think sometimes as busy moms we feel guilty taking that time for ourselves, but it's absolutely necessary because ultimately, like, I heard this quote one time that said, um you cannot set yourself on fire, like, to protect other people or something along those lines, and I basically, like, if you're not taking care of yourself first, you are in no position to take care of the people that you love and care for, so it's really important for us to also do the things that, keep us, healthy and balanced, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually as well.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, that's why whenever you're on the airplane, they always say put your oxygen mask on first, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not like, I can't save anyone else if I'm not taking care of myself. And it's not selfish. It's really uh for the love of yourself and your family when you do that. Because if you can't be there because you don't take care of yourself, then what? So
Well,
I'm
it's
all
like,
for self-care.
yeah, there's this interesting paradox though between, for women in general. Like if you're a stay-at-home mom, you feel, I think some moms feel guilty because, they're not contributing financially per se. And if you're a working mom, you feel guilty and selfish because you're not there 24/7 with your kids. And there's no right answer, right? In terms of what you should be. Everyone needs to decide that for themselves and what's best for their families. But I think women in general, irrespective of where we fall in life, like there's just a lot of like guilt and um that we feel, and
Yeah,
learning to deal with that is a challenge.
it
So
is. We're very hard on ourselves. And why do you believe that is?
I don't know. Maybe just because I think we expect so much of ourselves. We expect ourselves to be perfect. We expect
Mhm.
ourselves to be available to everyone at all times. We don't
Yeah.
want to disappoint anybody. We oftentimes put other people's needs ahead of our own. And then we, chalk it up as sacrificing for the greater good. But, there's only so much you can compromise of yourself before it really starts to deplete your energy and your ability to be who you are. And that's a hard lesson. It's a lesson I've learned 10 times over in this life, but you cannot keep sacrificing yourself for everybody else because at the end of the day, at the end of your life, what regrets are you going to have? Hopefully none.
So I want to ask a question. I know there are a lot of big egos, especially in the legal industry. How do you rise above the dynamic of the big ego when you walk into a courtroom?
Oh boy. Um, there's a lot of very seasoned, experienced attorneys who have a lot of ego in this career. And I think ultimately that works to your detriment because the way that you excel in this business and build your reputation, which follows you everywhere, is by putting your skill set up front, ahead of anything personal. It's one thing to be confident, and I think walking into court, everybody has to have some level of confidence, but that really comes from you being well prepared, doing your homework, knowing the case law, knowing the facts of the case better than anybody else. being comfortable with the parameters of whatever it is that you're going to be discussing in court, and not letting your personal feelings or your ego get too invested in the outcome, because ultimately, the judges are the ones that are making decisions based on all of the things that are being presented, and you win a lot of things and you lose a lot of things, and when you start investing more of your ego into things, it really just doesn't play well. And it also kind of follows you in the community. Like, there's a lot of lawyers out there that we just know they're mostly puffing and all talk, and they don't have the bandwidth or the necessary experience to back up a lot of the things that they do. So I think the distinction is ego and confidence, right? It's perfectly acceptable to be confident, and you should be. You need to be
Yeah,
walking into a courtroom with confidence, but not being egotistical. And people don't appreciate that, and people don't like that. And frankly, like, um, if you're prepared, that should speak for itself.
yeah,
There's no ego involved. At least I try not to have an ego involved. So.
I love that. So, would you say that being prepared would be the difference between ego and confidence?
I think it's really a personality trait. It's a characteristic of most
Mm,
people. To me, there's a big distinction between being confident, which to me means you are comfortable in the information that you need to provide, but you're also comfortable enough in yourself to be able to communicate that in the
mm,
ways that you need to advance the interests of your client. Whereas ego to me is more of an emotional sort of prejudice, if you will, that you have about yourself. Like, no one's better than me. Like, I'm gonna win everything. Like, these other lawyers are beneath me. To me, that's ego, and there's no place for that
yeah.
in in anything really, but especially in this industry, although it's quite prevalent.
Which is interesting. Why do you think it's so prevalent?
Um, I think it's mostly comes from attorneys that are much older, very experienced. It's still very much a man-dominated field,
Mhm,
and there are a lot of people who do not appreciate or respect powerful women in the industry. And when I say powerful, I don't mean that you're better than anyone else. I just mean that you are a seasoned litigator. You're capable of handling yourself and your cases. And ultimately, like, a lot of people just don't respect that. And so the only way for them to somehow get one up on you, if you will, is by trying to exert their dominance, exert their ego, and not make it about the case, make it more about, personality versus personality.
mhm.
And, it just really doesn't have a place in this industry, although I would venture to guess it's probably in every profession. There's a lot of
It is.
people's egos that are wrapped up into their experience, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I mean,
It
you
is,
hear
and
you hear stories about these, like, incredible trial lawyers that, like, were so just loud and vociferous in trials, and that made them who they were, and they're great lawyers, but there's a time and place for everything. And
that's true. And there's also an awareness to it as well. There's a lack of awareness to it as well when you're in your ego and, probably some of it is narcissistic behavior. However, I commend you for rising above that and continuing to move to get the seat at the table. That's what's necessary for us to continue to move forward, push the envelope, and rise is not to be scared off the table.
right. I mean, I've let my work and my results speak for themselves, and they
Yeah.
can say things about me far louder than any words that I could actually ever vocalize. So
Mm,
that's
I
what
love
got me that's what got me the seat at the table, is not giving up, believing in myself, putting in extraordinary hours and hard work, and
mm,
getting incredible results, and building relationships and rapport with very important people at very big companies,
mhm,
that have a relationship with myself as an attorney and with the firm. So,
Mhm.
you know, all of that didn't just happen overnight. It's been a work in progress. I am still a work in progress, but that's how I got a seat at the table is my results.
I love that because it reminds me of a quote, "Let your reputation speak for itself." So if someone's talking about you, it doesn't mean anything because, like you said, you've put in the work, you're prepared, your reputation, the rapport, the relationships that you've built speak for itself. Which and I think this goes, hand in hand. They're always going to be the naysayers, or when you walk in the room, you could hear the whispers. And sometimes it's
And one of the
hurtful.
hardest lessons, yeah, one of the hardest lessons I think I've had to learn in this life is that what other people have to say about you is none of your business.
That's right.
It just isn't. It's a reflection of them. And sometimes people will try to belittle you or be condescending towards you, not because of any one thing that you've done, but because they have whatever insecurities they have and they're putting that on you. So you just have to kind of separate yourself from that and not take it personal and not take it to heart and, just keep moving forward. So,
I agree, and one of the most powerful things I learned, and I learned this 10 years ago, I wish I learned it sooner because it would have saved me a lot of heartache, was the most empowered person in the room was a person who takes nothing personal, and that's when I learned, it wasn't about me, it was get curious, like you said, their insecurity, their projecting, and you're right, and it's funny because Mike came home the other day, he's all there's 2 types of business, my business and none of my business. What someone else says about me, you're right, it's none of my business. That's their perspective based on their own map of reality, which has nothing to do with me. It's so
right.
powerful.
It's a difficult concept to accept, because I'm like, for me personally, I'm a very emotional, sympathetic, empathetic person. And so it's very hard not to take things personally sometimes, but you just have to do your best to do that, especially in business. I mean, there's no emotion in business, right? It all comes down to what's best for the client and doing things that are best for the client, and you have to take yourself out of that. You cannot be emotionally invested in the outcome. You just can't.
Well, that's also in life, I've learned that, detaching from the outcome, because when we're attached to the outcome, that creates, like you said, that the pain and we make it about ourselves, where I've learned that it's also about in business, it's about service. It's about service and serving, the client, and for me, like, coming, from the heart and like you said, being prepared, and I'm sure for you as well, like, you want to provide the best for your clients to help them, win their case. It's not about Juliana, it's
Right.
about
I mean, right. And the law is a client service industry. And we do our best to provide guidance and advice. I mean, that is our job is to provide guidance and advice and tell them how to approach certain circumstances and to help solve their problems and to move things forward. And it is not about you, the attorney, uh, irrespective of what side of the V you're on. It is about what is best for the client and how to approach that, and that's obviously very different in every case depending on the circumstances, but it is very much a client service industry. And I think sometimes people forget that
Mhm.
because, again, they're invested in their ego and all of
Yeah,
those other things that come with it.
and it's amazing once we step back and we become come from a place of, leadership and service, how incredible things, unfold. You're incredible. You shattered expectations by pursuing a modeling career in your 40s. Did you have any pushback from the industry or did you have any pushback from yourself? Because that's amazing.
I thank you. I did. I pretty much had pushback from everybody. People thought I was crazy for even attempting to try. But it's just something that I thought would be a really wonderful way to allow me that creative outlet
Mhm.
in life. And so I started sending headshots to various agencies, and I got picked up by a lifestyle modeling agency, and I've been working with them, and I've had a lot of calls for castings and things like that. And some of them haven't worked out, some of them have. I've done a lot of modeling for photographers to market for their personal businesses and things like that. And it's just been a really like fun thing to do. And honestly, like if it could be a full-time thing, it would be wonderful. But as you know, the expectation of what models are supposed to look like in this day and age, although it's changing very, very slowly, is very different than, what I look like. They look for people that are incredibly tall, incredibly thin, obviously much younger than I am. But I think, the expectations, and the realistic sort of advertising and marketing that's becoming more prominent in today's world is changing. So who knows? Maybe there'll be more opportunities for me down the line. But nevertheless, it's been fun and I wouldn't change a second of it. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so fun, and I'm all about fun and pushing the envelope and doing something different because I think we take life too seriously, and, that's something that I love about you. You push the envelope and you shatter those ceilings, and so I appreciate you for that. What's one word of wisdom that you can leave, us with today? Because I love how you said, age is just a number, push those limits. What's a final word of wisdom you can leave us with?
I think what I would say is this: if you never jump, you'll never learn to fly.
Mm,
And what I mean by that is you always have to take risks in life. Nothing great comes from staying still.
yeah,
So if you want to fly, you got to jump. So taking
yeah,
that leap of faith and having the courage to do that and being, confident in yourself and in your journey and knowing that whatever's meant for you is coming. Um,
mm.
you know, just, you just got to jump.
Yes, I love that. I love that. You just gotta jump and whatever's meant for you is coming. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you. I know how busy you are. You are a badass. And let us know, tell our audience where they can find you.
So I am not on social media much these days, but I work for the law firm of Wilson Elser in San Francisco, so you can find me there. And yeah, that's about it. So
Wonderful. Juliana, thank you so much. And please share, like, subscribe so we can continue to bring you incredible guests like Juliana Salfiti, who just continues to shatter those glass ceilings. We love you, Habibti, and look forward to staying connected with you. Thank you for joining me.
thanks for having me, Grace. I really appreciate it.
Hey, love, thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful for you. I'd like to show you my appreciation by gifting you a free forgiveness self hypnosis audio download. Part of living the fun and fabulous life is practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness can be such a long and challenging process. My intention is that this forgiveness audio will help you in practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. Grab it by visiting daretoachieve.com/forgiveness. For more inspiring tips, make sure to connect with me on social media. Drop me a line on Facebook or Instagram at Grace Redman Dare to Achieve. Until next time, keep moving forward towards living your fabulous life.